You scroll through hundreds of job descriptions, but they all sound the same. You spend so much time on every application, but it doesn't seem to matter. You send off application after application, but never hear back. You thought the interview went so well, but it's a no. You jump through all the hoops. The news keeps saying how there are all these employers that are struggling to find people to hire. So why does finding a great job have to be so hard? It doesn't seem very logical or fair. It's not. The system is broken. It's not your fault. The process most people go through to get a job is awful. But here's the good news. The system isn't very smart. In fact, it's downright dumb. It can be beaten. How? Most prospective employers and employees today are using the same old tired strategies that have been around forever. It's like professional camouflage. Everybody just blends into the crowd. But you don't have to be that way anymore. You can get traction. You can stand out from the crowd to unleash your God-given potential, to help a world in need, to do work that matters, to earn what you and your family deserve. You can do this. You're meant to do this. There are bright things on the horizon for you. This is the way. Hey there, welcome to the workshop. Get hired fast without settling, getting ignored, or losing hope. My name is Eric Woodard. I'm a coach based out of Washington, D.C. And if you're here today to help get your job search sorted, you're in the right place. So glad you're here. Know your time is valuable and just, you're probably looking for help in a lot of places. And if you're here, so glad you are. If you would, put in the chat where you're from and how long you've been on the job search. I mostly want to make sure that people can hear me. And I see we already have a big crowd here, people from all over the country and all over the world. Put in the chat where you're from and how long you've been on the job search. And we're going to get started. I see you there, Cheryl Ann in Ohio, Cheryl Lynn in Ohio, and Jesse in Seattle. Sometimes being on a job search can feel like pounding sand, New York, or Michael in New York, and Alexander, I see you there 6 months. Hey there, Kim in New Jersey. Sometimes it can be like waiting on a glacier, Scott in LA and Vindy in Seattle. Sometimes it can be like you're lost at sea, Mike in Nova and Monair in Durham, Edward in New Jersey, Kim in North Carolina. Sometimes Catherine in Detroit, it can be like wandering through the desert, Sabine in New York, Zaide in New York, and Jessica in Chicago. Sometimes it can be like going into the arena, Charlotte in Chicago. And sometimes, Joe in Kenya, it can be like staring into an abyss. Same for you, Padmaja in Michigan. Michael in Michigan, I bet this is for you. And if you are somebody unsure about the direction you want your career to go, Paul in New York, if you're struggling to find ways to describe what you do, Daniel in New York, if you're uncertain if your resume is any good, if you've been wrestling with how to follow up after you apply, Carrie in Michigan, if you're tired of applying and then you hear nothing back, Carrie in Michigan, if you're doing interviews that seem to be so great and you still get the no, if you're trapped in a job you don't like and you're not sure how you can escape, and most of all, my friends, if you're losing hope, this workshop is for you. On the other hand, if you're just somebody who's super casual about your career, not willing to do a lot of work, reluctant to take responsibility for the results you've been getting, Scott who's exploring options, if you're just interested in finding a job to make money, if you're stuck in your ways and sort of closed-minded about trying new things, if you're unwilling to be authentic, this may not be the workshop for you. So what you're going to learn in this workshop is how to get how to get hired fast without settling, getting ignored, or losing hope. I'm going to offer you 4 strategies, 9 tactics, Chantel in Durham, so that you can do work that matters and pays what you and your family deserve. So here's the thing. This workshop is mostly going to be one long, big sales pitch. Nah, it's not. I got nothing to sell you today, my friend. So if you're bracing for that, you can just relax. I've got nothing I'll be trying to sell you today. People who sign up to work with me often do it because just like the ideas I offer speak for themselves. Now, here's what I will say. Um, During this call, I'm going to invite you to do a call with me, and we're going to drop that link in the chat. If we're going to drop it, there you go. Thank you, Anne. And so if you want to book a call, book a call, because people are going to book calls during this workshop. You may be hearing things that you haven't heard before. You may be hearing things during this workshop that sort of contradict the conventional wisdom. That's the idea. So make sure you have something to write with, because we're going to go fast, because we want to get hired fast. And here we are. So if you have questions, put them in the chat. And yeah, without any further ado. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about who I am. Not a lot of time. Offer you 4 strategies, 9 tactics. Again, I invite you to a call, and then we're going to have time for questions. Here we go. Who is this guy, and why does he think he could help me find a job? Well, I grew up overseas. I came to the States when I was 17. I wound up transferring colleges 7 times. Here I am in the Midwest wondering why it's so cold. I eventually wound up as a scuba instructor on Guam, where I spent about 10,000 hours underwater. And that was great. It was beautiful, and there was sun and fish, and my brain got real spongy. And I thought, well, there must be something more than this, even though I was having a lot of fun. So I thought, what would be the most prestigious job I could have? And I thought, well, that must be something like the White House. So I took out a piece of paper and I wrote a letter, and I said, "Dear Mr. President, you should hire me." It was the worst cover letter ever written. And I mailed that sucker off, and I figured I'm never going to hear from those White House bastards. And I didn't. But I got thinking, I got into grad school, and eventually I was riding my bike past the Guam post office, and they came out and they said, "Eric, you got this letter for White House stationery." And I opened it up, and it was an internship application. And I didn't know what an internship was, but I was really good at filling out applications. So I filled that out, sent it in, and I'm like, I'm never going to hear back from those guys. And sure enough, I wound up going to grad school in DC, and was out running past the White House one day. And I thought, those White House bastards, they never even bothered to let me know about that internship thing. So I found a payphone, I put in a quarter, and I said, "Hey, you White House," I don't know if I called them bastards, but I said, "Hey, you White House people, what about that internship thing?" And they're like, "Is this Eric from Guam?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm in DC now." Like, "Man, you're supposed to start in the First Lady's office on Monday." So I got a haircut, I bought a suit, and I showed up. And look, folks, we just went through a political season here in the United States. I don't know what your politics are. If my politics aren't the same as yours, please forgive me. This was back during the Clinton administration, and I started working in the office of Hillary Rodham Clinton, First Lady at the time. And she was a great boss. And I wound up getting hired on her staff in Hillaryland, and eventually followed her to the Senate. And I eventually followed her to the State Department, where I did UNESCO stuff. And then I wound up doing as the director of fellowships and internships at the Smithsonian. And all during this time, both as an early professional, mid-career professional, I just through my own career and seeing a lot of other people trying to figure out their career, I saw the same pattern over and over and over, where there's a lot of great people out there trying to dent the world, trying to do great things. And this industrial job searching complex that we have stands in the way of a lot of people. And there's nothing very fair about it. There's nothing very linear about it. There's nothing very logical about it, despite what everybody says, right? And so there's nothing I enjoy more than what I do now, which is helping people figure out this job stuff, right? I give a lot of talks. I do a lot of coaching. I've written a ton of books. I have so many fancy degrees and certifications. It's very impressive. And I've got all these reviews, all these people saying how amazing I am, and you don't care about any of that. Because what you care about is, can this guy help me get a job? I don't know. Maybe, probably. I've helped a lot of other people get jobs. Let's see what we can do for you. So here we go. 4 strategies. Buckle up. Okay, so this is for the chat. I would love for you to tell me, what is a good resume about? What's a good resume about? Put it in the chat. I'll be curious to know if anybody gets the right answer. What's a good resume about? And there's a little bit of a delay between the time I ask questions and I see your responses. So they're coming. Oh, wait, Christopher, it's about me. Very interesting, Christopher. Whatever gets their attention, Sandra. Mike says it's a marketing document. Get on board with that, Mike. What's a good, what I can provide, says Ron. Okay. Navita says you. Okay. Results and impact. I actually haven't seen the right answer yet. Showcase your skills. Nope. Summarizing your expertise. Getting you an interview. Yep. Skill. Okay. So here's the thing. A lot of people think a good resume is about you, just like Michelle just said. I say that with a lot of love, Michelle, right? What gets through the ATS, says Chantel? I don't know about ATS, Chantel. We'll talk about it. Michelle says showcasing yourself. Yeah, a good resume is not about you, my friends. A good resume is not a professional summary, Michelle. Sorry. It's definitely not about keywords. It's none of that. A good resume is about them. A good resume is about the person or organization you're sending it to. It's not about you. And look, folks, if you get nothing else from this workshop and you get this alone will change your job searching game. It's not about keywords. It's not about you. It's not about your skills or experience or any of that. It's about them. Okay. And I see you there, Grant. I see you. Okay. So strategy number one, it's not about you. It's about them. So many job seekers think that application is about them. It's not. It's about you. And you can take down our question there if you would, right? Employers are focused on themselves. Think about it, right? Like the reason an employer gives lunch to its staff, like the reason Google gives lunch to Googlers is not because it's out that's the purpose of Google, right? The reason Google gives lunch to Googlers is so they'll make better Google, right? And it's no wonder, like a lot of times we think in a job search that it's about us, because very often the first job search we ever did, we did coming out of school. And in school, it is very much about us, right? It's our cubby, it's our report card, it's our grade, it's our transcript, it's our award. And yet when we move to the working world, it's not about us, it's about them. It's about the client, the customer, the constituent, the shareholder even, right? That's what it's about. It's about them. So something to look at in your job search. I was talking to a client earlier today, and he was spending a lot of time on a website to personally brand himself. And I'm like, that's beautiful. And nobody in the history of the world has gotten a job because of their website. It just hasn't happened. There's one reason that they will hire you, and it's not your skills or experience or any of that. It's, do they trust you? So anyway, let's talk about strategy number two. Okay, next question. And I like what you said, Hannah. You're right on the money. Okay. So if I went to a library and I saw a lot of storybooks on a shelf, and I looked at the words on the front cover of those storybooks, what do we call those words in English? Right? What do we call those words on the front cover of a storybook? What are those words called? Thank you, Sean. I appreciate that. What are those words called on the front cover of a storybook? What are they called? That's right, Mike. Title. That's exactly right, Edward, Jeff, Alexander. Title. That's right, Brian. Now, isn't it interesting that's the same term we use to label people in the workplace, which tells me, just like Hannah was saying, that we want to tell stories. Okay? We want to tell stories. Let me ask you a question, and this is for the chat. What percent of human decision making do you think is emotional, and what percent is logical? Okay, what percent of human decision making is emotional versus logical? Is it 50-50, 60-40? Like, put it in the chat. I'll be curious to see if anybody gets it right? Because so many job seekers base their job search on facts. Okay, and so Alexander says 70% emotional. All right, very nice. Jeff says it's 90% emotional. Okay, Siri says 90% emotional. I haven't seen the right answer yet. 80% emotional, says Michael. Okay, we'll allow for a few more here. Right, what percent is emotional versus what percent is logical? Okay, here's 75% says Christopher, if we're talking normal people. So here's the thing. Nobody's gotten it right so far. Here's the correct answer. It's 100% emotional. Decision-making takes place in the limbic system. And that's the emotional part of our brain. And the reason we know this to be true is when some poor guy in the 1800s gets like a railroad spike through the head or something, and their limbic system is destroyed, like they're fine. It's actually not a problem, except that they can't make a single decision. And that's the debilitating part. Hey there, Jessica. Great job booking a call, Jessica. Nice work, right? That's the debilitating part, right? Is that they can't make a single decision. They can't decide what piece of food to eat or anything like that. So it's 100% emotional. So those of you who are walking around saying, well, companies that make data-driven decisions, right? No, they don't make data-driven decisions. Decisions are 100% emotional. Now, people will rationalize those decisions later, looking for facts to sort of justify the original decision, but the original decision is emotional. And the reason stories are so powerful is that stories are how we convey emotion, right? When people are trying to remember like an encyclopedia, they turn it into a story into their head. I always get in trouble when I ask this, but if I was to ask most of you on the call, like, how many of you remember your telephone number from when you were 5? There's always a few people that are like, I remember, but most of us mere mortals would be like, I don't remember. And yet we could probably describe in great detail how we felt on our 5th birthday. People remember how you make them feel. That's what we're after. And stories are how we convey feelings. So if you're not putting stories into your stuff, into your resume, in your cover letter, into your follow-up, into your networking, into your interviews, it's something to pay attention to. Facts are fine, and they're not that compelling, at least compared to stories. So realize that titles are just a story, right? And titles are going to vary between organization and between industry and geographically. It's all made up, right? This isn't about facts. It's about stories. So perfect example. Notice I'm about to tell you a story. One time I was taking applications for a program and had a whole stack of applications. And this one woman, Maggie, had written how the summer before she'd been in a terrible car accident and her arm had been severed. I felt so bad, right? So we brought her into the program and I'm waiting for her first day. I'm thinking about accommodations. This poor woman, maybe she needs help. She's only got one arm. She walks in, 2 arms. Now it was bandaged from where it had been partially severed and reattached. And she was doing some physical therapy to get her motor control back. Was I mad? Of course not. I was so happy she had both arms. And I remember this story to this day and how it made me feel. I probably couldn't tell you much else about Maggie, but I remember that story. So if you're not using stories in your stuff, it's a real opportunity. All right, next strategy. Who can tell me who this guy is? Put it in the chat. What is this guy called? I'll give you a hint. He's from Idaho, right? What is this guy's name called? I bet no one knows. Nobody on this call knows who this guy is called. What's this guy's name? Thank you, Sean, Alexander, and Edward. That's exactly right. This guy is Napoleon Dynamite. That's right, John Eder. That's right. That's the actor, right? Right? It's Napoleon Dynamite, Daisy. That's exactly right. So if you haven't seen this movie, please stop your job search and go watch it, obviously. And I don't want to spoil it for those of you who haven't seen it, but the setup in this, so the deal is Napoleon's a high school kid. He kind of beats to a different drummer. And in this particular scene, he's put on stage in front of his entire school. He's managed to get a cassette tape up to the sound booth, and he's got to do some kind of performance. And it's not planned. And so they start playing the music, and Napoleon's standing there, and he just does this craziest. I see the Sean. Sean says people in Idaho are like that, right? It's hilarious for Idahoans. I believe you, Sean. So Napoleon does just this crazy dance. I mean, he just lets it all hang out. And Miriam, you just booked a call. Congratulations. Way to go. Miriam booked a call. Look forward to talking to you, Miriam. So Napoleon lets it all hang out doing this dance. And when he's done, the crowd is silent. The students are silent. And then all of a sudden, like the student body erupts in applause. And the reason it works is because it's so authentic. Jamie Kern-Lima, the founder of It Cosmetics, says, everybody's a good dancer if they commit fully. And she's right. And this brings us to strategy number 3, authenticity, right? Authenticity. People are going to hire you because of who you are, not in spite of it. And if you've got something on your resume, like I'm proficient in Microsoft Office, and that's not how you talk on a daily basis, get rid of that. That's right, Scott. Vote for Pedro, right? So, and by the way, if you've all of a sudden the dates of your graduation have disappeared because you're worried about people are going to discriminate you because of your age, stop. Put them back on there. It's never the scandal. It's always the cover up. If you've been following that advice about, well, people only care about the last 10 or 15 years, you don't want anything older than that. You know who usually says that? People that only have about 10 or 15 years experience, right? People are going to hire you because of who you are. Let me ask you a question. Who do humans hire? I'll answer my own question. Humans. Humans hire humans. Humans don't hire robots. And by the way, those of you who are worried about ATS, robots don't hire humans either. Humans hire humans. So if you don't have evidence in your resume and your cover letter and your follow-up and your networking that you're a human, it's something to look at, friends, right? You don't want to be perfect. Humans hire humans. You want to be relatable. Perfect example. One time I was looking at a bunch of resumes. I boiled it down to two, and I had to make a choice. They were virtually the same, except Tom told me that he played the trumpet. Guess who we hired for the position? Tom, because at least he played the trumpet. I had a client recently, and you can steal this. She put on her resume, and this was her idea. I thought it was brilliant. She said 2 truths and a lie, and then she listed 3 things. She got 2 interviews and 2 offers because of that. And the reason we know that happened is because those employers told her that was the reason. I have another client that got an interview because he put on there that he ran marathons. Trust me, I've run 9 of those things, and I bet some of you have run a marathon. And if you find another person that's run one of those things, you instantly have a lot in common. Trust goes up, right? Same thing if you're a parent, right? Moms and dads. Now, look, I know moms get it worse than dads, and I apologize on behalf of society. Dads are heroes. Moms are a burden. No, you're not, and I get it, right? But put that on there because you could say you know how to solve problems and make sacrifices and communicate creatively and be empathetic, or you could just say you were a mom. And anybody that's been a mom or had a mom is going to know what that means. People are going to believe they're going to believe what you show them more than what you tell them. Okay, Devin says, I talk about being a mom of worry. It's a liability. Well, Devin, I don't know about you, but I sort of trust moms. My wife and I have kids, and you know what our guidance to them is? If they get lost, find a mom. It's not find a dad, right? It's find a mom. I don't know. Maybe that's a stereotype. Okay, authenticity is a superpower. So here's Abe Lincoln. He says, give me 6 hours to cut down a tree, and I'll spend the first 4 sharpening an axe. And this brings us to strategy number 4, right? Which is consistency, right? Consistency, right? You can work your tail off. And the idea here is not to work your tail off. It's to work smart, right? It's to work smart. Greg's asking, what if ATS doesn't even show your resume to humans? These days, there are so many barriers. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to that, Greg. You stay tuned, right? We want to be consistent, right? The current results you're getting are not because you're lazy or you don't have the experience or you're too old or you have mustard on your shirt. Your current results are perfectly attuned to your current system, which means that if you want different results, you want to change your system. Now, you can figure out that system on your own, and there may be parts of the system you don't even know that exist, or you can get help. That's what I do through my program, right? Is I have a system that, and it's not the only system, but it's a system that works, and it helps people be consistent. We want to work smart, not hard, right? Ideally, we want to up the quality of our stuff and then turn up the quantity, right? If we do those 2 things, we're going to get results. Pauline says, what on the resume should we include? Where on the resume should we include personal details, right? How about creating a section, Pauline, right? Just create a section. On mine, it says more Eric, and I list that stuff. It's awesome. Okay. We want to iterate. There's no one thing that works best for everybody, right? If we are doing something in our job search and it's not working, the opportunity is to change it up. There's no one answer for everybody. And the idea is, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. So if you've been getting the same result for a long time, there's a chance that you've been invoking the same system and you're just kind of like pounding sand. My invitation to you is to do something different. That's something that I work on with clients, right? There's no such thing as a failed experiment. Okay. So sometimes people can get paralyzed because they're like, oh, I don't want to try it because what if it doesn't work? Great. It's like Edison said, I Found 10,000 ways not to make a light bulb. You can do the same. And it's going to take a lot less than 10,000 ways to apply for a job. Remember, it's not about you. It's about your systems. So how do you put all of this together? How do you put all of this together? All right. Well, this brings us to our 9 tactics. And again, we're going to go pretty, Edison's from New Jersey. That's right, Alexander. We're going to go pretty quick here. So buckle up. 9 tactics. Here we go. All right, friends. If you're watching the replay and you've been sort of like, trimming your bonsai tree, I want you to come back to me because this is probably one of the most profound things I'm going to offer you in this workshop today. And if you're here live, you're cooler than the people who are watching this on video. And I want you to pay attention too. Pay attention. Okay, I want you to put this in the chat. I'm going to give you a metaphor. So let's say there's a lake, and in the middle of the lake, someone's drowning. Now they're surrounded by other people in little boats. Somebody's drowning in the middle of the lake, and they're surrounded by other people in little boats. If that was a job search, who's the person drowning? Put it in the chat if you would, please. Right? Put it in the chat. Who's the person drowning in that situation? Von Shanta, how do we manage a career gap because of caregiving? I'm afraid of being passed up because of a gap. I really hear you there, Vashanta. I hope I'm not totally mispronouncing your name. And, at the end of the day, they don't care about the gap. Nobody's been hired or not hired because of the gap. It's about whether they trust you. All right. So Christopher says in terms of drowning, it's me. Alexander says it's me. Pauline says it's the hiring manager. Brian says it's the company. Michael says it's me, right? In terms of the person who's drowning. So I got to hand it to you, Pauline and Brian, you're right. In a job search, you're not the one drowning. It's the employer. That's right, Daniel. And the reason we know it's the employer, it feels like you, Sean, I hear you. The reason we know it's the employer is they've told us. They put out a job description and they said, help, I'm drowning. Now, a lot of potential job seekers, right, are acting like they're the ones drowning. They're like, oh, pick me, I'm the best, I'm the best. You don't want to be that way because that's just creepy, right? If you were like that in a real drowning situation, that person drowning would probably want to get the hell away from you. Like, what's that guy's agenda? I'm drowning, but I don't want to take that guy's hand, right? You want to be somebody that approaches this from a place of service and realize that you're safe in the boat, not them. And if you get nothing else in your job search, like make it about them, that's really important. But this isn't about selling yourself. This isn't about looking good, because that's not why they're going to hire you. They're going to hire you because they trust you. And the reason they're going to trust you is you give them safety. So this brings us to tactic number 1. Most people are like, I hope they pick me. Stop doing that. You want to have a mindset that they'd be lucky to get you. You need a job and you don't need that job, right? They need somebody, there's lots of people out there looking for jobs, and there's only one Greg. There's only one Sean. There's only one Tamika. Okay. You are serving cake. They might not want the cake you're serving, but that's not going to keep you from offering unabashedly. You can be more committed to serving them, more committed to saving their lives than looking good. And if you get in the water, metaphorically, and you spin them over and you lock lips and you start giving mouth to mouth and they're like, hey, lady, I was just snorkeling, that'll be just fine. Because you'd rather have that happen than there be drowning and you not do anything. This is the attitude you want to have in a job search, my friends. Okay. Approach it from a place of service. People don't want to be sold, right? That's weird. We've gone over this historically, right? Like selling people is weird and buying people is weirder. So get away from selling yourself. Nobody wants to buy you. And if they do, we need to have a longer conversation, right? Like people want to be seen, heard, and understood. All right. Tactic number 2, I think this is. So some of you have seen the show Deadliest Catch, right? It depicts these fishermen in Alaska, and it's usually like a really scary fishing boat, and it's icy. And what these guys do to catch crabs is they drop these big steel cages on the bottom of the ocean with a little bit of bait to catch the crabs. And a crab comes along and sees the bait and says, aha, free lunch. And so Bob the crab goes in, starts nibbling, right? And all of a sudden, Charlie, his buddy, comes along, starts nibbling again, and more crabs join. And eventually, the cage is pretty full. Now, here's the interesting thing. If and when a crab decides to leave the cage, the other crabs will pull that crab back in. They'll even pull off one of that poor crab's limbs, or they'll do a crab murder. right? They'll do a crab murder because instinctively crabs feel safer when they're together. And of course, it's the most dangerous thing because all of those crabs get pulled up and become dinner. And this brings us to tactic number 2, which is environment. Most people, most job seekers don't even consider it. You want to consider your environment. And this brings us to the idea of reference groups, right? You're the average weight, income, education of the 5 people you hang out with most. So if you're hanging out, and these don't even have to be live people, this can be the media you consume, the books you're reading, like whatever. If you're hanging out with crabs that are pulling you down, even if they're your family and they're doing it because they love you and they want you to feel safe, and they're like, just settle. We want you to be safe. We don't want you to put yourself out there and get rejected again. Comes from a good place and it's not helpful. So you want to dial in your environment. You want to safeguard it. Okay. It's really important. Okay. Tactic number 3. So often I'll talk to job seekers and I'll say, what do you want to do? And they're like, I want to help people. I'm like, that's beautiful. Single tier of Diet Coke. Right. And then I'll say, well, how much do you want to make? And they're like, anything between $25,000 and $300,000 a year. And I'm like, and what this brings us to is it's really hard to hit a blurry target. And it brings us to tactic number 3, which is clarity. If you don't have clarity around how you can serve the world, how can you think employers will? You want to get real clear around what you bring to the table and who you're there to rescue. Okay, this brings us to the idea of the reticular activating system, right? This is when you buy a new car and you drive it off the lot. And you're like, nobody's got this car, and then you see like 5 of them, right? It's because our brain will literally find what we tell it to look for, and it's really hard to find help people. It's hard to find 25,000 to 300,000. So our brain just won't find anything, right? It doesn't know what to look for, and you'll literally miss it. So you want to get real clear around how you can help the world. Okay. It's not just important, it's vital, right? There's a reason when race car drivers drive 500 miles in a circle that they don't look at the outer wall, because when they look there, that's where the car will tend to go. So you want to have clear foveal vision on what you're after. And if you don't, it's no good. All right, here we go. Let's put this in the chat. If I went to a hardware store and I bought this, what would I be buying? Put it in the chat, if you would, please. If I went to a hardware store and I bought this thing, what would I be buying? Put it in the chat. Let's see if anybody gets it right. Sean says, my problem is how I can do too much and have a huge resume. Honestly, not bragging at all. It's a problem. So Sean, we don't want to make yourself small, right? We don't want you to be small. The opportunity there is to make it more about them, right? You're not too much. It could just be that it's not about them. So Matthew says it's a drill. Yasmin says a tool. Jeff says it's a drill. Jared, a power still. I haven't seen the right answer yet. John Kimberly, Zayde says the impact driver, but I'm seeing a lot of drills. So here's the thing. If I went to the store and bought this, a subscription to AOB products, if I went to the store and bought this, I'm not buying a drill. What I'm really buying is a whole. I don't need one of these things sitting around my garage, although I think I actually have this very one in my garage. But that's not why I have this. I don't need this sitting around my garage. What I need is a hole. And actually, now that I think about it, I don't need holes in my walls. Who wants that? What I need is a place to put the hook. And now that I think about it, hook sounds pretty scary. I'd go walk past that hook, gash my arm open. I don't need hooks hanging off my walls. What I need is a place to put the picture of my family. And actually, now that I think about it, I don't even need a place to put the picture of my family. What I really want is the feeling I get when I look at the picture of my beautiful family that's hanging on the hook, that's in the hole that was made by the drill. And this brings us to tactic number 4. We want people to feel safe. And the way we do that is we make them feel seen, heard, and understood. So if we spend a lot of time, first of all, most people don't even talk about the drill. They're just focused on themselves, which is a hot dumpster fire, right? And when we start talking about them, we don't want to talk about the drill. We want to talk about the thing that keeps them up at night when they're looking at the ceiling trying to go to sleep. If we can get down to that black swan, my friends, you're operating at a different level in terms of your job search. And this is the kind of thing I help my clients do, right? Get really, really clear about what's motivating them, okay? What keeps them up at night? How can we make them feel more seen, heard, and understood? All right, let's talk about tactic number 5, paper. right? So I'm talking resumes and cover letters, and I'll be really honest with you, resumes are pretty stupid. Like the idea that we're going to boil our lives down to like a couple pieces of paper. I mean, what is that about, right? Maybe when we die and go to heaven and there's like that gold book that has everything we've ever thought. And okay, maybe that's, but short of that, this is very curated. It's very arbitrary and everybody has an opinion about it. And anybody that tells you there's one right way to do it, they're a liar. And there are some things you can do that will really help you stand out. And it's not the best practices, right? So many people are like, well, I want to use best practices. I stop doing that. That just makes you have, that's like professional camouflage, right? Look at my resume. I got hyperlinks in there. I got like logos and on purpose just to make my resume different. Because if I'm trying to make the case that I'm exceptional, that I'm different than the others, I want some recruiter to be like, I've never seen a resume like this. And I'm like, thank you very much for noticing. You're right. I'm unlike any other candidate you've ever seen. That's the whole idea. Okay. So you want your stuff to look different. You don't want it to look the same. You want to communicate with potential employers in a way they cannot ignore. This is one of the things I help my clients with, right? Hyperlinks, for instance, look at all those hyperlinks. They might never click them, but at least it shows that you know how to think four-dimensionally, right? That you're thinking. All right, what is this? Tactic number 6. Good Lord, we're trucking along here. If a job application submitted and there's no follow-up, does it even make a sound? I would suggest that it doesn't. Now, folks, I'm not talking about following up after an interview. I'm talking about following up after you apply. And for those of you who are saying, but I don't know who to follow up with, this was a hostage situation and the person you loved most in the world was going to be in real trouble if you didn't get in touch with somebody at XYZ company by the end of the day. Do you think you could get in touch with them? I bet you could. And if not them, you could get pretty close. There's a lot of ways to find people, my friends. And some of you who are like, well, but I don't want to be too pushy. Stop. Remember, they're drowning, right? If somebody was drowning and you said, hey, buddy, you okay? And they just kept floating, you wouldn't just go, ooh, I don't want to bother them. No. Right? You would follow up. This is about service, not looking good, right? It's not pushy. And by the way, you can make all these, I have so many stories. You can say, oh, well, I take initiative, and then you don't follow up. People are going to believe what you show them more than what you tell them. Perfect example, right? A guy named Darren Hardy, some of you may know. He used to publish Success Magazine. He does his own stuff now. And Elliot, you signed up. Way to go, Elliot. Nice job. Look forward to talking to you, Elliot. Right? He used to be a realtor, and apparently when somebody's contract expires with the selling realtor on MLS, that shows up. So like every realtor in town sort of descends upon that house. And they're like, I'll sell your house. And usually they start calling around mid-morning. What Darren would do is he would knock on their door at 5 a.m., full suit, paperwork. And they'd be like, who the hell are you? And be like, I'm Darren Hardy. I'm going to sell your house. And if they didn't sign up then, around mid-morning, he'd send him a really big gift basket. If that didn't work, around early afternoon, one of his associates would show up with a sold sign. And Darren said he lost about 1 out of 5 for being too assertive, and he got the other 4, right? Because people were like, if you work as hard to sell my house as you have to get my business, my house is going to sell in no time. And it did. You want to follow up fiercely from a place of service. It really matters. Okay, tactic number 7. And this is a big one, folks. It's a really, really big one. And here it is, networking. And what I'm basically talking about is asking for help. And some of you are like, well, I posted on LinkedIn 3 months ago. I have the open for work banner. My network knows. No, they don't. It would have required them to go to your LinkedIn on that day and happen to see it. And even if they know that you're open for work, you haven't asked them for help. You haven't said, I need your help. You ever see the Academy Awards where they get up there to accept a big award and they say, yeah, I got nobody to thank. And they just sort of stand there and it's awkward. It doesn't happen. Right? They get up there and they got to thank this person and this person, this one, and they start playing the music and this person. They finally bring out the big cane to pull them off. Right? People who achieve great things, they don't do it alone. Right? They do it together. Right? If you want to go far, travel together. It doesn't make you look weak or needy. It makes you look strong. So if you're getting real squeamish about asking for help, my friends, this is probably the biggest thing I help my clients overcome. And it's also the thing that gets them the most results. Right? We want to systematize this because if we put out one email, right? It's sort of like putting out a fishing line. We got to get on the right fish on the right day with the right bait at the right depth at the right time. We want to systematize our networking so we are filtering the ocean. And that way we don't have to worry about lightning striking. And by the way, how many of you have helped someone else? How did it feel? Probably pretty good. So by you not asking for help, you're being stingy with giving that feeling to somebody else. Stop being so stingy. Ask for help. You're giving a gift. Makes you look strong, not weak. By the way, Brene Brown has taught us the best way to build trust is through vulnerability. Be vulnerable. No one-offs. You want to have a system, right? All right, here we go. Let's talk about interviews. Tactic number 8. Here is the best interview advice I can give you. Are you ready? Buckle up. Here we go. Make sure you write this down. Stop answering their questions. If you go into an interview, stop focusing on answering their questions, because trust me, and those of you who have given interviews will know this, they're not really there to get information. What they're really doing is just, we put people into a small room or small Zoom room, and we have some of the people ask the other person questions to gauge whether they can trust that person. This isn't an information gathering thing. What they're gathering is, can we trust this person, right? Can we trust Greg? Can we trust Devin? Can we trust Kim? That's what we're after here. So when you go into an interview, focus on the answers you're going to give and the stories you're going to tell, right? You're going to take a stand for them, even if because they may ask you questions that are completely irrelevant to them feeling safe. And you could even say something like, Bob, that's a really interesting question. And rather than spend time on that question, let me address this question, because I'm guessing this is really what you care about. Now, look, you got to be careful with that. If it's a very technical interview, then you're going to want to answer some questions, right? But anything that's like, tell me about a time, or basically if they're gauging if they can trust you, like when you go into an interview, your mission is not to perform, it's to connect. It's not about selling yourself. It's not about looking good, right? That's exactly right, Alexander. He says, my best interviews start with questions that turn into conversations. Exactly. Kim asks, what do the systems look like for networking? Kim, that's one of the things I do in my program, right? There's a lot of systems that one can use to filter the ocean that aren't draining, right? It's one of the things we do. Devin says, are LinkedIn postings even real? Yeah, some of them are, and you don't want to apply through LinkedIn anyway, because sometimes those aggregators, as you suggest, Devin, they're not real. You want to apply through the organization's website. So interviews, right? You want to connect with them, not perform. All right, folks, final tactic. Tactic number 9, we're talking about offers. And here's something that I find invariably, right? Sometimes I'll talk to people, and those of you who signed up to talk with me, you're so brilliant. Nice job, right? Sometimes I'll talk to people and they'll say, I'll say, hey, like, how many applications are you sending out? How many jobs do you apply to? And they're like, well, Eric, I'm really picky about where I apply. And I'm like, well, why on earth would that be? They're like, well, you got to understand, right? If I apply, then I get the job, then I got to move my family to Connecticut, and they come up with this negative default future. Realize that when we apply to a job, there's 2 things we don't have to worry about. 1, if we're qualified, they'll have an opinion about that. And 2, we don't even have to worry if we want the job, because until we get an offer, it's not something we have to even worry about. And even when we get the offer, we can say yes, no, or counter, and that's a phone call. So those of you who are, really wring your hands about, ooh, do I apply? Like, stop doing that. Make it about them. Push the button. Follow up fiercely. Network around it fiercely. And if they're like, hey, I'm drowning and I don't need your help, it's fine. There's lots of other people drowning. Okay. So this is how you want to handle offers. You want to do it from a place of service, because you might get into the process and really like it, or you might think it's something that you'll like and then you don't, right? That's what we're after. Okay, so write this down. 4 strategies, 9 tactic, and I know there's been a ton of activity in the chat. So if I've missed anything good, hopefully you'll repeat it. Right. So some of you have gotten through this workshop and you're like, you know what, Eric, this is beautiful. It's really different from what I've heard other places. Right. Like, this seems like kind of the opposite advice of what I've heard elsewhere. Exactly. And by the way, that advice that you've gotten elsewhere, how's that been working? You don't have to tell me. I already know. Right. And sometimes what happens is people will go through this workshop and they'll be like, you know what, I'm going to do this on my own. That's great. And a lot of times I hear from those people about 6 months from now, and they're like, Eric, I'm doing it, and it's not working. And I look at their stuff and it's all about them. And they're telling, not showing. And then they sign up with me and then they get hired. Right. So if you think I might be somebody that could help you, I have no idea if I am, like, let's book a call. Right. And no strings. What I will ask is that if you book a call, I'm going to ask a couple things. One, you're somebody who's serious about figuring out this job stuff. You value your time more than money. I charge people when I work with them, and there's no strings for these calls, right? A lot of times I do these calls and I help people and they don't sign up, and that's fine. But I'm going to ask that you're at least serious when you're a serious job hunter. And if you book a call with me, you're not going to cancel. You're not going to reschedule at the last minute, because I only have so much time. And when people book time with me, it means that other people can't book time. So if you haven't already booked a call, do so now, because I'm seeing people like booking like crazy. And I actually have time this week. I have time this week. Actually, I'm going to change my calendar right now. I forgot to do it before I got on this call. So let me change my calendar. And so I just opened up Friday. Okay, now Friday should show up. I've never done that live on the call before, but I just did it. So there should even be more availability than there was just a second ago. Because I've got time, especially Friday and next week. So if you're interested in booking a call, like, let's make that happen. Because do you want to keep doing this on your own? And how's that working? Okay, so let's talk questions. Who has a question? If you would, especially if there's one I missed, put it in the chat. And I actually know there were some questions that people had sent in ahead of time. So let me take a look at those right now. Okay, here we go. Let me just open them up here. So Owen says, my question is, for example, when asked what the expected salary that you require and you have no knowledge, how do you handle that? Well, look, a great thing, Owen, when it comes to salary is you want to stay in curiosity, right? You want to stay in curiosity. So if they say, well, how much, if we offered you this much, thanks, Ann, right? If we offered you this much, like, would you take it? Your response to them is going to be, well, I'd have to see the offer. Right? So no, like, pre-negotiating, right? I'd have to see the offer. And then once they make the offer, if they're like, we want to pay you 5 cents a minute, right? Or five cents a minute might actually be okay. We want to pay you 5 cents a day. You say, hey, really appreciate that. And given that you want this and 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 this, how can I do that for 5 cents an hour? Right? That's what we're after here, right? We want to put the ball in their court. I see you there. Thanks, Ann. What if ATS doesn't even show your resume to humans? These days, there's so many resumes that we hear rumors. That's right, Greg. This is a great question. So here's the thing. Those of you who are focused on ATS, first of all, how's that working? Probably not very well. The opportunity is to circumvent that function, that process, because somewhere behind the scenes, there's a real live hiring manager that's drowning in work. And they're probably a little pissed off at the recruiters anyway, because why is it taking so long for me to see some people that can help me do the work that matters, right? So we don't, like, nothing against recruiters, and they're professional gatekeepers, right? Like, following up with recruiters, meh, right? Stop that. We want to find hiring managers, and we want to talk to them like humans. Like, playing the ATS game, like, stop doing that. Like at least for now, my friends, we have thumbs, right? Computers haven't taken over the world yet. And at least until they do, the reason they're going to hire you is because you're a human, not in spite of it. Not in spite of it. Sean says, my problem is I can do too much and have a huge resume. Honestly, not bragging. It's a problem. Well, Sean, I don't know. Is it a problem? Is it a problem that you've done so much? I doubt it is. What it could be is that you might not be packaging it in a way that helps employers see the possibility for them. See, if I've got a huge long resume and it's all about me, and an employer looks at that and they really just can't see the possibility for them in what I've done, then it could not be super effective. But don't make yourself small, right? Sometimes I'll see people that are like, well, I'm sort of dumbing down my resume to get like less qualified positions. Don't do that, right? You don't want to do that. Don't dumb down your resume. Apply for bigger things, right? This is sometimes an exercise I'll do with my clients. I have them apply for something that they think is just impossibly underqualified for. And you know what happens? They tend to get interviews, right? Because people are more apt to not hire somebody because they're overqualified than underqualified. So if you find that you're not getting traction, one of the things I do with clients is to raise the bar, apply for higher things, right? Apply for higher things. Mike says, what's my success rate? Mike, I work with people, they get jobs in 3 months or less, or I stay with them until they do. And that's most of the people I work with. So it's pretty awesome, right? You don't have to do this alone. You don't have to do this alone. Michi, hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly. How can I determine that I'm speaking to a person who will be able to offer me a job? So many times these days, the person who answers the call doesn't know about the actual job. That's true sometimes with recruiters. And whether they can offer you a job or not, the opportunity is to serve them. Service is rewarded, Mickey. Hopefully I'm saying your name right? Service is rewarded, right? So, and you know, a lot of times people will look through job listings with the prism of, do I want that job? Do I want that job? And that's only at most a fourth of the story, right? The Japanese have this really cool idea called ikigai. One of the Venn circles is, do I want the job? But there's 3 others. Am I good at it? Can I get paid for it? And does the world need it? And my invitation to you and everybody on this call is to focus more on, does the world need it? Yeah, actually I can make my head gigantic here. Sorry about that. So you can see my full gigantic head. It's like a planet. Okay, what other questions? Ann, you're doing a great job. Thank you. Scott asks, how much does one who's looking to pivot out of a pigeonhole effectively communicate transferable skills? So interesting question, Scott. If you've been not getting traction communicating about your skills, I'm not surprised, because they don't care about your skills. What they care about is, can we trust Scott? This guy's Scott. Can we trust? And more than that, does Scott understand us? So instead of spending a lot of time talking about your skills, talk about the possibility for them. That's how you're going to get traction, Scott. That's how you're going to get traction. Okay, Devin, what about applying for things that might have parameters that don't work for you? Like if you want to be hired remotely, but it's an in-person role, still apply and see if you can get them to usher their expectations. So much here. We don't want to play in expectations. What we want to play in is the world of agreements, Devin. So, because expectations just suck. Like anytime you ever hear somebody say, well, I expected this, you can be like, well, that's an interesting thing you just made up in your head. Good for you that you expected that. We didn't have an agreement on it. It's such a great word, expect, right? So what you can say is, yes, you want to stay in the land of curiosity, Devin, right? You want to stay in the land of, we'll see, or how could we make this work? I'm curious. I have a lot of questions. Because let's say you get the job offer and they say you have to come in every single day from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. You could say, wow, really appreciate the offer. And can I ask you a question? They'll say yes. How can I do that? How can I do that? Right? And we don't know what they'll say. Maybe they'll say, well, we'll pay you $1 million to do that. And then you might be like, okay, we don't know. But see, that's the land we can live in, right? That's where because as soon as we say no, as soon as we lay down an ultimatum, as soon as we know a lot of stuff, doors closed. There's no possibility, right? I know I'm too old. I know it's because I don't know the right people. I know it's because of the gap in my resume. I know it's because of the economy. See, as soon as we know any of that, possibility goes out the window, my friends. And knowing stuff is great for some things, curing COVID, making airplanes fly. Yes, we want to know stuff. But when it comes to job searching, the right question isn't, is it right or wrong? The right question is the story I'm telling myself useful? Those of you who are like, holy crap, I've never heard this before, book a call. Okay, Sandy says, how do I get my resume to break through the noise, as it were? I've revamped so many times, experimented with formatting such, I can't change my actual experience, so what do I do? So great question, Sandy, and part of this is the story you're telling about it. Okay, this is the story you're telling about it. And it's making the resume about them. So if your resume, is a bunch of stuff and it's just basically telling, talking about Sandy and Sandy's skills, and whoever you're sending it to isn't seeing possibility for what they're trying to get done, and you're not following up, you're not having your network chime in, like all these other things you can layer on top, that could be why your resume is not getting traction, right? And I don't know, I'd have to take a look, but for a lot of people, at least that I work with, that's the case. That's the case. And you're doing a great job. Love these questions. Greg, I'm not seeing interest even after hiring a resume writer. How do I get that engagement? So here's the thing about resume writers, right? What did Eisenhower say? It's not the battle. He said battle plans are useless, but battle planning is indispensable. So when I work with clients, I do not write their resume. I do not write their resume because I want to teach them how to fish, not give them the fish, right? And we want your resume, Greg, to be the most Greg resume it can possibly be, because the reason they're going to hire you is they trust you and it's authentically Greg, right? And you're telling stories that only Greg knows, right? And it gives them safety. That's why they're going to see your resume, Greg. So we want you to write the resume. We want it to be the most Greg resume. Now, are there techniques? Like those of you who have that big monster wall of text at the beginning of your resume, it's my executive summary, right? And it talks all about you. Please stop that. Please delete that. Because those of you who have hired people know, what's the first thing you look at on a resume? Where are they now? Or what have they done most recently? And based on what they've done, is there any chance they could help me out of the nightmare that's my life in this job, right? That's what they're asking. So we want to give that to them. We want to make them feel seen, heard, and understood. And only you, Greg, are going to write a resume that's your best version. Now, if you want some help doing that, that's exactly what I help clients do. And you can do the same. Yasmin, you booked a call. Nice job. Nice job. And Grant, you signed up for a call. Good job, Grant. I bet there's more here I've missed. So if you signed up for a call and I've missed you, I apologize. But so looking forward to talking to you. Barbara, working for a corporation and working as a consultant is very different situation. I'm looking to work for consulting firms or contract jobs. What's the approach for wanting to do a project? It's a great question, Barbara. And a lot of the clients I work with, they are looking for contracts. Some of the people I work with are actually trying to start a business on the side and they want a part-time gig to help support that. It's largely the same. And because we're not so worried about like the terms of the offer we're going to get, we're basically focused on how can these guys be helped, right? When they come back and they say, hey, we want you to give you a W-2 and have you work 90 hours a week, you'd be like, hey, given that you want this and that and this and that and this and that, what if I did that as a contractor and you could pay me less and I could do it in less time? That's how we live in the land of possibility, right? That's how we stay like that. So it's largely all the stuff I'm talking about, Barbara, is the same. Pauline asked, should we customize the resume for the job? Well, Pauline, I love the question. And if a good resume is about them and you're sending the same version to more than one employer, at least one of those versions is going to be misaddressed. So yeah, you want to customize it to them. And for those of you who are like, oh, that's such a pain in the ass, it doesn't have to be. Right? You can come up with a system. This is one of the things I work with clients on, right? Coming up with a system that you can apply for a job in like 30, 45 minutes. If you can do one a day, that's got teeth, right? That goes back to what I'm talking about, consistency. Because the last thing we want to do here is make this job search a drag, right? Is to drag you down, to drain you, right? We don't want to do that because that's going to take away from your safety that you feel. And if you don't feel safe, employers are going to smell it. They're not going to hire you. So the right way I would humbly suggest to job search is to like do things that lift your spirit, be authentic. That's why they're going to hire you. Guys, you have asked so many great questions. I so want to honor you. We're going to take one more from Greg. And if you haven't already booked a call, right? Alexander signed up. Fantastic, right? If you haven't already booked a call, book a call because we can get this job thing handled. Again, my only ask is you're one, serious, and two, you're not going to cancel, right? Even if you have like a work thing, because our brain learns, right? And if we take because right now those of you who booked a call have basically said, hi, Vam is Vami Sidar. I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing your name, but you signed up for a call. Great job, right? So those of you who are like, well, I'll book a call and maybe work will get in the way, or I had a person the other day had their car, right? They had to go take in their car and it seemed like they had some latitude when they were going to do that. Like every time we put other things more important than ourselves, we teach ourselves that the car or that last minute phone call or some other random thing is more important than our future. And so the idea behind having a coach is you're not going to do that, right? You're not going to do that. You're going to make yourself a priority because if you keep doing what you've been doing, if you keep making yourself less of a priority, I hope lightning strikes and you get a job in November. And it's very likely you're going to be sitting in February, March, April, May, and you're going to be exactly where you were. And I don't want that to happen. And it doesn't have to. You can get this handled. All right, Greg. So I apply for a high-paying $300,000 CTO, head of engineering position on LinkedIn, and followed up with email. And I can tell that no one even opened the email. Lots of applicants. And I have a feeling that no one sees my resume. Most jobs I've ever got were through placement agents or personal connections. So a couple of questions for you, Greg. I wonder that email that you sent, what was the subject? Because if the subject was just applied or really interested in your company, that's all about Greg, right? You want somebody to open an email. What if the subject was, you're awesome? Or just a plain old thanks. I've never gotten an email that said something like that I haven't opened, right? The human desire to correct is insatiable. And the human desire to feel seen is insatiable. So any subject that you can offer, and it could be that you had the wrong email, that's possible. But that's how you make it impossible for them to ignore you. That's what we're all about. That's what we're all about. All right, my friends. So look, I just really acknowledge you for being here, for spending your valuable time here. Those of you who've already booked a call, I'm really looking forward to talking to you. And if you haven't yet, you're going to get a replay of this. You might even get a text to book a call. Don't wait. Time is filling up, and you don't have to keep doing this on your own. You don't have to keep doing the same thing you've been doing to keep getting the results you've been getting. There is so much possibility for you. And I just acknowledge you for all of it. And just please know there are bright things on the horizon for you. You're going to figure this out. The only mystery here is time, is how long it's going to take and how much that's going to cost you. So if you want to compress the time it takes to find the job, book a call and we'll figure this out. And I'm so cheering for you all. Have a great day and thanks for being here, my friends. Great job today.